Hi, it's Dia. Today I'm going to do the pumpkin test with the ARTEZA set of 72 expert colored pencils. I've done this with the ARTEZA woodless pencils, Prismacolor pencils, which one was Prisma? Prismacolor pencils, Polychromos, and Guanghui. So let's color this pumpkin with the 72 expert set. I used an image from Penelope's Garden, and although all the images in the book are only one-sided, the first thing I did was put a piece of paper behind the image so I couldn't see the image behind at all. So I started with yellow, and I just basically went from there. What I usually do, like you've seen in these videos before, is I lay down on a basic pumpkin, nothing fancy, yellow over the whole area, because the pumpkin, although it is mostly orange and has a definite orange feeling to it, there are different grades of color. There's everything from green to yellow to orange, and even a little bit of browns and reds in the shadow area. Then I went one shade darker and went over the whole thing that I already colored. And right on the top, above the little mouse and the mouse hole, I left white because the moon is coming from that direction, and I wanted that to appear very reflective. And now it's on to orange yellow. I'm going a little bit lighter here because I'm already building up. This will be the third layer, and no, I'm not pushing that hard, but I don't want to make it, I don't want to have too much buildup too fast. I'm using, as you can tell, mostly the side of the pencil and starting to form some of the shapes in the pumpkin. Now I'm jumping over to straight orange, and for the first time I'm definitely pushing a bit harder. And I can tell you at this point, even after all those layers, these pencils are working very nicely. Comparing these to the woodless pencils, I would say that these pencils, these premium pencils in the set of 72, are creamier, more pigmented, and just a joy to work with. This orange is going over the other layers flawlessly. And like I've said in other videos about the ARTEZA products, these are highly pigmented and very nice. The next pencil I chose was yellow-green. Excuse me. It's a very light green, and I like to choose greens and browns and other colors in pumpkins, like I said before, other than just orange, because it gives it more of an organic feel and it looks like a genuine pumpkin. Now this color is lighter in tone than the other colors than the other orange that I had just used, and you can see the actual color here on the stem. But going over the orange, it's lighter, so it wasn't as much of a green pop, and that's what I wanted. So it is blending nicely, but since it is lighter, you can't tell as much. I'm not incredibly neat when I first start to draw with a Prismacolor or a, when I start to color with a Prismacolor or a Polychromos pencil, because I know I'm going to be building layers and I'm going to be blending them all together. And I'm finding myself doing the same thing with these ARTEZA pencils. I'm not worried because I can tell by the way they're laying down and by the way they're layering on top of one another that it'll be fine. I'm using a light brown here, going over some of the stem to add dimension, and at the bottom of the pumpkin where the pumpkin curves up and around to give it that nice round shape, and to give those sections shape too. Now getting even darker with a dark brown and eventually a red in this area on the dark side of the pumpkin where the shadow of the moon would be the most. These are both darker colors than I had been using, and they're layering perfectly over the top of all the other colors that I've used so far. I'm starting to be a little more careful where I put my details because I am pushing a little harder and the colors are darker. And so far, so good. You can see that I'm using a relatively dark red here and going over the layers that I have already put down. And you can also tell that the layer, although it is red, it lends itself to the pumpkin just fine. It doesn't look like it's standing out as simply red. It looks like it's part of the pumpkin. And just a quick side note, I love this time of year. I love that the leaves turn color and they fall and it gets blustery and there's a slightly spooky feeling, except for the last couple days. It's been sunny, it's been beautiful, the leaves on the trees are green, so I'm just wondering when this season is actually going to hit. And back to the image. I'm taking a very sharp dark brown pencil and I'm making some finer details. Now, like I said before, and as you've seen, I have many layers here, and these fine details are going right over the top, no problem. So this set does allow for lots of layering and really pretty fine details because of the nice colors and the ability for it to sharpen so nicely. The points are, I would say, hard, but not too hard. I would say they're probably something like a polychromos in hardness. So now for the first time, I'm actually going to start blending. And instead of using white, I'm using yellow over the top and pushing relatively hard. The colors are blending together very nicely. And I chose yellow because I don't want them to soften up too much. And since I started out with yellow in the pumpkin, it's sort of the base color of the image anyway. Now I'm taking the color Jade, which is a really intense, dark, slightly bluish green. And I'm going on the underneath parts where I would see shadows in this pumpkin patch. And I'm using it instead of the black, excuse me, or the brown. I'm also using it in the stem. On this pumpkin, and probably on anything botanical, it makes for a really nice, intense, shadowy feel. In this next section, I go back and forth with yellow, red, black. I add some shadows and some more details in the pumpkin to make it look, in my opinion, more realistic. Dark brown, jade. Basically finessing it and making it the way I think it looks the most realistic. And also, there's lots of layers, and I'm getting to see what these pencils can actually do. And although I'm not done, I can tell at this point that I definitely will be giving these pencils a thumbs up for the pumpkin test. I'm adding more detail. And I'm going over an area right there that has a crease, a tiny little crease in the paper where I may have pushed too hard. And I'm going to show you briefly how to fix it in a minute. Now I'm taking the black and I'm going to make a shadow of that curly stem. Now I don't actually know if the shadow would make it so perfectly on the other side of the pumpkin, meaning the shadow of the moon, but I thought it would be a nice effect, so I made the curl sort of opposite of the way it is on top, and it looks like the shadow is from that stem. Now I'm going to quickly color the mouse, in light gray and a darker gray. I'm going to use the black, just like I did on the other pumpkins, for the shadow on the inside of that little mouse hole and underneath the mouse. Then I'm going to use fuchsia. Whoops, I jumped the gun there. A little bit of yellow. I used fuchsia for the inner part of his ears. It's a bit darker. And then I used flamingo for the rest. Now I'm taking blood orange and blending even more, even over that black that I just drew, so it's integrated right into that pumpkin. So I'm going back around and adding details with orange, blood orange, some of the browns, just to make that dark side darker, and the pumpkin gets lighter as it gets around to the part where the moon would be reflecting on top. Now you see that little area where there's that little white line. Just sharpen your pencil. Here I'm going to use orange because that's going to be the basic color. And then you very, very lightly go only on the inside of the mark that's sort of a divot. It's not going to be perfect, but you can make it soften up a little bit and then color around it. I'm using a red here in the shadows of the mouse because the color of the pumpkin would deepen also. It wouldn't just be a dark area. The orange would deepen also. Now I'm just going back and forth looking where I would deepen the shadows or make the stem look a little bit more realistic. I went over that jade piece with a darker, I think it's either brown or black, I don't remember. So that's it for now. As you can see, the pumpkin worked out really nice. It definitely stands up to polychromos here, Guanghui, Prismacolors, and you can see it up close. The colors are bright, vibrant, and the ARTEZA pencils passed the pumpkin test and it gets a thumbs up. So I hope you follow me here and on Facebook. Thank you for being here, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.